Dan Stevens, you've had a pretty eventful spring with both Beauty and the Beast in theaters and Legion on TV on FX. And those two, of course, couldn't be more different from each other. And Legion in particular, like most anything that's on TV right now. Was it a challenge to wrap your head around it when you read the first script?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty mind-blowing concept, the whole show, really. But I felt in very good hands with Noah, and having read a few of his novels, particularly his first novel, Conspiracy of Tall Men, I knew that, you know, he was in the right kind of headspace to handle this kind of material, and I love these kind of things, a little bit weird, and you know, playing with the genre, but also playing with the audience. And you know, it's a really delicious character to kind of get your head around. And Noah's a very good person to sort of lead us into this world.
And your character, David, you know, is such an interesting character because he has advanced mental powers, but he's grown up thinking he has schizophrenia. He doesn't quite have a mental illness per se, but you know, he does have a malevolent force in his mind that makes him feel like his mind is turning against him just as much as if he were mentally ill. How do you prepare for, you know, playing a character that has such a fractured view of reality?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating one. I mean, he's certainly exhibiting characteristics that would suggest, you know, a diagnosis, a kind of classical conventional diagnosis of something like paranoid schizophrenia. So one of the many things I did was to research that condition and to sort of look at you know, patients who are suffering from the condition, some of the, you know, practitioners of, you know, treating, reading up a lot about it, watching an awful lot of YouTube videos, and there's some incredible stuff out there just online, very kind of frank, confessional stuff about, you know, day-to-day life living with this kind of thing. And then of course looking at the comics and kind of combining the sort of real world symptoms with some of the more fantastical elements and kind of fusing those two was a really fun exercise, actually, just as an actor, really, to kind of piece those things together and see where David might sort of sit in that matrix. Useful things to come out of the sort of real world research was that sense of reality, really, that, you know, some of the most fantastical situations that, you know, as a kind of, you know, quote unquote normal person, you would think, oh, that's definitely crazy. For somebody suffering with these conditions, and for David indeed, he sees that as very real. And so that really informs some interesting choices and you know, the way the scenes would go sometimes, that actually David regards something that the rest of us think is completely crazy as quite normal, and something else that seems quite normal and pretty standard as completely insane. And so everything gets kind of flipped on its head, and yeah, it makes for a lot of fun in playing.
A lot of the intense dramatic effect of the show in general comes from a lot of the crafting of the visuals and the editing. How much of that eerie, unsettling feeling do you get while you're actually shooting it?
Well, I mean, there's a combination of Dana Gonzalez, you know, lighting and the camera work. I mean, not that we're experiencing the camera work, but you're certainly experiencing the lighting in Andrew Wiley's set designs. And some of those sets, especially in Clockworks, the psychiatric institution that they are in to begin with, yeah, some of those lighting effects could be really weird and disorienting. And some of those sets you walk on, and like, I love that Summerland room that was just kind of this 360 diorama with the, you know, with the sort of stuffed goat and the wolf and stuff. I mean, just like the weirdest spaces to inhabit. And so they really helped kind of inform the weirdness of the show, I think. And they were great fun spaces to play in.
And you know, the show goes through so many different story twists. It goes backwards and forwards in time and into and out of the mind. You know, were all the time you shot the season, or were you discovering the story as you went along, and it was kind of being revealed to you as it went?
Yeah, there was a bit of both, I suppose. I mean, I had a sort of vague idea of where it was going, but I think initially, certainly, Noah was quite keen to leave David in the dark for you know, a number of these scenarios, so that I wouldn't know what was real and what wasn't, and other people wouldn't necessarily know what was real and what wasn't. I became convinced that Aubrey Plaza was privy to more information than I was, which I still don't know if it's true, but it was kind of informing my own paranoid delusion. I was like, I think she knows something. She knows what's up. And I'm pretty sure she kind of did, because obviously, you know, without giving too much away for anybody who hasn't seen it, you know, she does kind of control a lot more of the situations than I first thought she did. And but actually that sort of fed into that relationship really, and the way that her character manipulates the story and the way the plot goes, and the way I was kind of dependent on her for information was really interesting. It just made for a really fun dynamic on set.
Yeah, and late in the season, you know, David and, you know, some other characters become kind of trapped in this mind space. And one of the most interesting elements of that is that David ends up conversing with his own rational mind. And David is American, but the rational side of his mind is a British version of David. How complex was that sort of almost dual role kind of thing to play?
Well, it was never actually in the script that he was British, but I just sort of came up with this idea that he should maybe sound different. And so you know, I went to Noah and I said, look, is there any reason that, you know, rational David could, you know, possibly have an accent? And he was like, well, you know, what were you thinking? And I was like, well, you know, what if he was British? And he just paused and he just went, well, I suppose deep down, all of our rational selves are probably British. And that was it. That to me seemed like permission to go ahead, and nobody said anything further to that really. So we just sort of went ahead with that, and yeah, I mean, it's just fun to kind of explore the inner space of the character, as well as, you know, a lot of these sort of comic book you know, worlds take place in either outer space or a kind of fantasy space that is, you know, a fantasy version of our world. But actually to kind of turn that inward for a change, and really kind of, you know, have characters inhabiting the inner space of your main character is really, really fun. And you know, it means that, you know, we can go all sorts of different places and have Brits and Americans and who knows what.
Even though you know, David isn't technically mentally ill in the traditional sense, it does feel like, you know, especially those later episodes, like the story almost functions as a metaphor for, you know, mental illness. You know, with, you know, the monster inside of his mind, you know, could be an actual monster, or it could be a kind of a manifestation of schizophrenia, and the rational part of his mind trying to fight that illness could, you know, you could look at it that way. You know, did you see it that way? I mean, obviously you did a lot of research into mental illness to play the role, but how did you look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wanted to do justice to, you know, anybody who might suffer with any one of these conditions, but I think also to take a slightly unconventional approach to a show about mental illness. And I think there are a huge number of misgivings and misunderstandings around the issue of, particularly of schizophrenia, and certainly of the treatment. And I think one of the things that the show explores is the, you know, it's not just the condition and the symptoms of that condition, but the drugs that are given to treat these conditions are massively misunderstood. And while they may treat some of the symptoms, they actually come with a number of effects that cause all sorts of other mental problems. And then, you know, the sort of problems are compounded by these, you know, unknown pharmaceuticals that are thrown at these patients. And so that really helps kind of layer the world as well. So you get these moments where, you know, he's in the queue and he's lining up to take his medication, and then things take a really dark turn because of whatever he's been put on. So it definitely explores that side of, you know, the mental illness question as well, I think.
The first season ended on a cliffhanger, pretty much. You know, with not, you know, a lot of things unresolved, a lot of, you know, conflicts ongoing. So thankfully, the show is coming back for a second season. Do you have any feelings about where the story is going from here? Or have you seen any scripts yet? Do you know when you start shooting again?
We start shooting again sometime over the summer, I gather. I think sort of later in the summer, and I can't give anything away. It's extremely exciting, and I'm thrilled that we get to play again in that world. I had such fun making the first season. It's, you know, it really is the role of a lifetime, and it's just a really fun cast to work with, and everybody was delightful, and just, you know, we had a blast. So yeah, really looking forward to playing again.
Shifting gears a bit, I want to talk a little bit about Beauty and the Beast because that's also came out this year, and it's such a different kind of role to play. Certainly,
Yeah.
especially so many visual effects just involved in creating your character in the first place. Was that a difficult character to get into the spirit of? Given all the technology involved just in creating him.
Yeah, I mean, it really felt like a brave new world for everybody involved. That I think, it's never, that technology has never quite been used that extensively certainly not for a romantic lead in a film like this. So yeah, I mean, as different as it is to Legion, it had a similar level of kind of mind blowingness in terms of what we were what we were attempting. The sort of weirdness of what I actually looked like on the day. Wearing this kind of ridiculous big grey muscle suit, and it was absolutely magical to see it go from this kind of this crazy setup to the beautiful final result. And seeing the film over the course of it was 18 months or so. Seeing the beast emerge and from the sort of digital realm was really magical experience.
Expectations were high for Beauty and the Beast in the first place, just because of how fondly remembered that 1991 animated movie was. What was your initial thoughts, just about the idea of doing a live action version in the first place?
Well, this kind of film, the idea of a live action remake just didn't really exist when I was a kid. So, it made me feel like a kid again, just somebody presenting this idea. And, I really enjoyed Cinderella, and I thought, Kenneth Branagh did an amazing job with that. And, Beauty and the Beast is one of my favorite fairy tales. And I love fairy tales. I have 3 kids now. I love reading fairy tales to them and sort of, playing in that sort of fantasy realm with them. And so to get to represent one of my favorite characters from fairy tales in any form was a treat, but to do it in this hyper advanced digital way was it tickled my nerd brain as well as my kind of literary fairy tale brain as well. So I was delighted.
There was a bit of a kind of surprising controversy around the film. There's like a gay moment for LeFou, and suddenly this exploded into this giant kind of online controversy. Were you surprised that became such a point of discussion?
I think we were all a little bit surprised that Beauty and the Beast could become a so-called controversial film. I think it was a lot of fuss about nothing really. And, as with a lot of these things, the hype was being stirred by people who hadn't seen the film. And, I think most people who have seen it, the fuss is about. So yeah, if you're still concerned about it, you should probably go and see it and check it out.
And, a lot of people first came to know you, from Downton Abbey, which is of course internationally successful. But a lot of the roles you've taken since then, including Beauty and the Beast and Legion, have been really worlds apart from that kind of storytelling, that kind of genre. Has that been a deliberate choice as an actor to want to kind of branch out in very, very different directions, or has that just been how it worked out with the opportunities that have presented themselves?
Well, it's a bit of both. I mean, I had always dreamed of having the opportunities to play this kind of variety of characters, and it's not always possible early in your career. You kind of play what you're given when you start out, and so I started out doing a lot of costume drama, period drama, that kind of thing, and moving to the States was a very exciting adventure, and I was fortunate enough to meet the right people and the right number of people who were excited to see me explore a number of different avenues. So I feel like I've really been challenging myself as an actor in the last few years, and really started to kind of tick some of the boxes that I'd always dreamed of ticking. And there's still a few more to come. So yeah, I'm just enjoying exploring at the moment.
Did you you left Downton Abbey in the middle of its run, a very dramatic exit with your character being dying in a car accident. Did you keep up with it after the fact, like just to kind of follow those characters and stories along until it ended?
Yeah, absolutely, and it was really, it was lovely to see everyone, and kind of strange, to be honest, to see everyone in that space that I'd inhabited for 3 years, still there, and it was, I'll admit at the beginning it was a little strange to watch, but yeah, I've kept in touch with a number of those guys, and it was a really wonderful time.
Well, I want to congratulate you again on Legion and on Beauty and the Beast. You know, that little movie that made it just $1 billion in the box office so far. And
Thank you very much.
season 2 of Legion too.
Thank you very much. All right.